Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 16, The Half-Elf Godkin. It felt like something was happening far away. However, there were signs that this noise wasn't from an emergency like a monster attacking the village, or someone was wounded. You guys were the last ones coming from the city, right? Huh? Oh, yes. I haven't heard that anyone except us was coming. Could it be? Yeah, that's right. When someone comes to this village it's like this, I guess. They're also an outsider. There wouldn't be this kind of reaction if it were one of the dark elves from around here, assuming that maybe an elf came. Or maybe it was someone from Nazareth. No, Ains thought. If they wanted to contact Ains, they had message and other methods of doing so. It was hard to believe that someone from Nazareth had come. However, if the other party were an elf, then only one sort of being came to mind. Could it be a peddler? It might be, though I also have a feeling it's something a little different. Well, it probably doesn't have anything to do with us. If something did happen, someone should be coming right away. The chief pharmacist answered as if he was trying to persuade himself that it was true, and once again turned back to the desk. More importantly, let's continue our work. You may have also been taught this by your master, but when mixing, there are kinds of medicines for which efficacy can deteriorate along with the passage of time. Their work was progressing much more slowly than it had been just a little while ago, but they would soon be forced to interrupt it. One of the dark elves from the village rushed in completely out of breath. Mango-san. The voice of the dark elf who had suddenly entered lost its vigor when he caught sight of Ains. Oh, fearsome. Pardon me for interrupting your work. There weren't any villagers who didn't know Ains had been hanging around the chief pharmacist's house to seek his instruction. Yet, something had happened, and he seemed to have forgotten that due to his impatience. So there's an apology for my temporary apprentice, but not one for me. What the hell is this? The chief pharmacist muttered, but he probably wasn't serious about it. His face looked dissatisfied, but in some ways it also looked like a mischievous child's. Oh, I'm sorry, Mango-san. Sorry for bothering you. Mango Galena, that was the chief pharmacist's name. The dark elf who had apologized to him kept glancing over at Ains. It seemed like he wasn't going to broach the subject. If this is something that would be bad for me to hear, then how about I step outside? No, it's really nothing like that. But, you see, Mango-san. An elf came to the village just a little while ago, and they said that the country of humans outside of the forest is attacking close by. When he had said that much, he glanced over at Ains once more. I see. If that is the case, it doesn't mean that the country I live in is the one that attacked. I think it is, probably, a country called Theocracy, a country that is near my own. I have heard stories about them attacking the elven country before. An expression of relief appeared on the dark elf's face. And the elf came to tell us to be sure to send troops from this village. That elf must also inform the other villages and has already left the village, but it seems like the elders want to have a meeting about what we should do from here. Quite a number of dark elves had gathered in the plaza. It was likely that everyone in the village, excluding the children, were gathered here. It seemed that they also used this plaza to hold meetings. However, though it was called a plaza, because this was a dark elf village, it was midair. It was a place that looked like a giant tray held in place by the bridges that extended from the trees. It seemed like a place they couldn't use if it rained. But they didn't have a meeting hall in the village. There were no elf trees that could hold this number of people. Perhaps when there were far fewer people, they might have done it in one of the elf trees, but that probably wasn't something he should ask about right now. Ains was participating in the meeting as an advisor. Frankly, he wanted to refuse the role. He wanted to decline with all his might a position with that kind of responsibility. Was there anyone, anywhere, who would be happy with this unpaid role in the first place? The most desirable thing would have been to participate as an observer, but the other side wanted him to participate as an advisor. Since Ains himself had been drawn to the topic of the meeting, he was hesitant, indecisive, and so bewildered that he just nodded in agreement while in that state. What had drawn his interest was, first of all, the outcome. There was a big difference between knowing and not knowing what sort of conclusion they came to. Next was who was for and who was against it. In what sort of atmosphere would they conduct their discussion? The things he wanted to know, things he wouldn't understand just from hearing about it, couldn't be learned by just reading the minutes of this sort of meeting. Even if some kind of conclusion came of this meeting as the consensus of the village, there would probably be people who would be dissatisfied with it or couldn't accept it. He hadn't decided on what to do about the village from hereafter, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to take the course of disposing of those who would bring detriments to Nazareth. If they were beneficial to Nazarick, he would bring them in individually. If it were Albedo or Demiurge, they might be able to infer everything without participating in the meeting, but for an ordinary person like Ains, that would be difficult to do. While looking out over the assembled dark elves, Ains suddenly recalled his time in Ainsulgown. For instance, even in a virtual world, where faces didn't move, the atmosphere of a meeting was clearly felt. Be that as it may, it was never that big of a deal. At those gatherings where things were decided by a majority vote, the ability to read the room wasn't that important. However, that probably wasn't the case here. Being in this position might be unexpectedly convenient. If I leave in the middle and abandon my voting rights, then I won't need to take responsibility for anything, and it's not like I have any degree of experience advising in a meeting anyway. To put it bluntly, Ains didn't know much about meetings. Of course, he himself had participated in them before. Suzuki Satori was a working adult after all. It would be rare for a company to not have any meetings at all. However, even if he did participate, his single vote was worthless. There were meetings in name only. They only served to receive orders from above. So his feelings toward them was only natural. Therefore, he only attended, nothing more. Well then, how had it been since he came to this world? Meetings in the great underground tomb of Nazarick were held for Ains. Because the opinions of Ains, the ruler, were always taken as being correct no matter how wrong they were, it was impossible for him to say anything wrong. However, since the Guardians recognized Ains as their absolute ruler and for some reason a genius who sees through all, they would keep asking for his opinion. This heavy responsibility was one of the main causes of Ains's psyche's deterioration. Since my opinion is always prioritized in Nazarick, it sure would be nice if I could acquire some useful knowledge about how meetings are conducted. At this one, there aren't any conjectures about what the absolute ruler is thinking. What he wanted to gain and what he was searching for were difficult for Ains to put into words. Even so, he thought that if there was something that could expand his knowledge, he would want to obtain it. At long last, the elders appeared. They stood in the center of the U-shaped crowd. To their right and left stood groups of miscellaneous dark elves, who looked like they were inserting themselves into the meeting. Ains's position was in a spot that was a bit separated from where the elders were. Yeah, to be honest, I failed. Because I was hanging around the temporary master's house, I couldn't completely grasp the relationships between the dark elves in this village. Even at this gathering of the villagers, there were people who he had exchanged casual greetings with, as well as those whose names he didn't even know. Ains only worked hard on gathering intelligence on the VIPs of this village. However, if you were to ask him if he knew what shape the web of relationships took centering on those people, he wouldn't be that well informed. That said, he had clearly explained why it couldn't be helped. Furthermore, even if he had worked hard and built relationships with them, he wouldn't have been able to become close enough for them to drop all pretenses and talk to him about anything in this short amount of time. Adults have a lot of things going on after all. I'd like to believe it's not like that for children though. Based on Ains's shallow knowledge of such things, there appeared to be no particular meaning in this arrangement of attendees. While thinking that he wished everybody had namatags, Ains used illusory magic to put on a serious expression for the time being, and waited for the meeting to begin. Now then, let us begin. One of the elders, the younger man, spoke. I believe you all have already heard about it from someone else. However, in order to determine what is factual, please allow me to explain it once again. Today, a messenger from the Elf King came to this village. He talked about how the country of humans to the north is launching an attack near the royal capital. Many eyes turned to look at where Ains was. No doubt they were thinking the same thing as the one who came to the chief pharmacist's house. That was the reason why he had to promptly deny it. It would be extremely inconvenient for them to have some weird misunderstandings. Excuse me, Ains raised his hand. It seemed that they didn't have that sort of rule, but he had interrupted the elder's speech, so he should at least do that much. Just in case, let me say this. It is a different country than the one I come from. The attacking country is a country of only humans, an ethnostate where elves are enslaved. A few voices of hatred rose up from the crowd in response to the word slave. No sooner than that could he hear whispers of "we know, elves," and other things of less significance. Somehow, it seemed that a rather free expression of opinions was allowed at their meetings. The country I live in is, as I have said previously, it's a country where various races live together. Because they are protected by law, there is neither hostilities nor persecution. Oh, that means they are not targeted because of their race. There are not very many criminals, but it is not as if they are completely non-existent, so if you were to walk around dangerous places, then just maybe. I cannot state definitively that such a thing wouldn't happen. I am sorry for interrupting you. Ains lightly bowed his head to the elder, and he responded in kind. So due to another country's attack, they have also requested for the Dark Elves to send soldiers. That wasn't a request. One of the youngsters shouted, his hatred apparent in his voice. It was an order to send. Though soft voices of agreement could be heard from here and there. The elders also didn't immediately try to stop them. At the very least, they probably held the same opinion. Then what should we do? Thinking that we should discuss this, we held this meeting. We intend to take the consensus that emerges from this village to the other villages and discuss it with them. Therefore, we would like for you to understand that this doesn't mean our opinion as it is will become the opinion of the Dark Elves as a whole. In addition, even if we bring this village's opinion to our talks with the other villages, not only may it not be adopted, depending on the situation, we may not even come to a conclusion. To this elder's words, another one continued.